And that's fair. And when it came to Maxwell, it was about the idea, right? They would bring these girls in and then they would have them recruit other girls. And that was kind of the network that was being built up. From a prosecutorial point of view, from a legal point of view, somebody's looking at this and saying, wait a minute, I'm looking at these filings and they're identifying certain people or they're redacting certain other people. And they say, there's not enough evidence to charge this person or limited evidence regarding involvement. What does that mean? So for a layperson, what does that mean?
The cover story just imploded. Everyone thought the Epstein files would torch a circle of untouchable elites until the FBI summary lands and claims there is no client list, no blackmail footage, no third-party abusers, just Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. That ending is supposed to close the book. Instead, it rips it open. Internal emails surfaced describing more than 3 million pages reviewed, over 1 million images and videos combed through, and still no evidence tying powerful men to the abuse. In February 2025, Pam Bondi goes on television and says a client list is sitting on her desk. By July 7, 2025, the Justice Department insists no such list exists. Congress forces disclosures in November. Releases begin in December, then stall for review. Victims describe being sent to royalty and politicians.
This just broke moments ago. The Democrats on the House Oversight Committee have released photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. We're getting dribs and drabs of this, and we had some pictures already, and here's some. There are some that show Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Steve Bannon, Bill Gates, and others. None of the released images depicts any misconduct. None is believed to depict underage girls. It was not immediately clear when or where they were taken or by whom.
Yet memos call those claims uncorroborated. If this is the cleanest conclusion to the dirtiest scandal in decades, why does it feel engineered? And who is shielding what? The Justice Department insists this is the most exhaustive review in modern memory. Internal communications dated March 20th, 2025 described teams of agents and prosecutors personally reviewing more than 1 million images and videos extracted from devices seized in 2019. They say every file that could possibly depict a female under 30 is flagged, cataloged, preserved. They detail searches of residences in New York and the United States Virgin Islands, noting surveillance systems near entrances, but none inside bedrooms or living areas, and systems that retain footage only for a limited number of days. They say recent recordings from 2019.
So first, I think we just have to say, and you set it up well, there are two real storylines here. One is what is in these files that we can see and that we can actually learn. We're going to get on that first. There's also the story about what is not in these files or what is heavily redacted, because that is also sparking a nerve.
They say recent recordings from 2019 are not seized because they are irrelevant to conduct alleged in the 1990s and early 2000s. Music that sounds clinical, methodical, airtight, but it also draws a sharp line around what exists and what does not. When an investigation emphasizes what it did not find, people close to the case say that is when scrutiny shifts to what might never have been kept in the first place. By July 7, 2025, the Justice Department publicly states that Epstein did not maintain a client list and that no further files will be released. The language is definitive. The case is described as concluded and pending inactive. Yet, just months earlier in February 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi tells a television audience that an Epstein client list is sitting on her desk. That
does defy common sense for any common criminal. Why would you maintain your own evidentiary criminality? But to Jason Chaffetz's point, that doesn't mean there aren't clients. Just because there might not be a list doesn't mean there are not clients. And Ghislaine Maxwell could be put to the test on naming the names, creating the list after the fact of people that she saw on the plane, Buck, or at the island. And
list is sitting on her desk. That word choice lingers. It spreads across social platforms, ignites speculation, fuels lawmakers demanding transparency. Then the narrative reverses. An internal email dated December 30th, 2024 confirms that the so-called address book entered into evidence at trial is not a client list as depicted in the media. Says plainly that none exists. Here is where it stops making sense. If the list never existed, why speak of it as tangible? People close to congressional offices whisper that phrasing like that is not accidental. It shapes expectation. It buys time. The memos go further. They state that none of the images reviewed depict intimate abuse involving anyone other.
The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted sex offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy redaction.
You depict intimate abuse involving anyone other than Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. They say that although approximately 4 to 5 victims accuse other adult men of abuse, there is not enough evidence to bring federal charges. The cases are referred to local authorities. They also mention allegations involving adult women, including an 18 to 20-year-old girlfriend at the time, but again say there is insufficient evidence to prosecute. One internal note states that no other victim describes being expressly directed by Epstein or Maxwell to engage in intimate activity with other men. That phrasing is surgical, expressly directed. It narrows the scope to instruction rather than environment. People familiar with federal standards point out that not enough evidence is not the same as none at all. But in public messaging, the music nuance disappears. The headline becomes simple. No proof of an elite.
When it comes to what's in these files, we've seen dozens of new photos we haven't seen before of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell with very high-profile people, celebrities, people like Mick Jagger and Michael Jackson, like you showed, also like British royalty and actors. All of that we sort of knew was happening. I want to highlight specifically two for the public interest, and that is President Clinton and President Trump.
Congress passes the Epstein Files Transparency Act on November 18, 2025. The president signs it the next day. By December 19, 2025, the Justice Department begins releasing records, including snapshots Epps kept of various famous figures he met over the years. The images circulate immediately. Context music is thin. It is unclear where they are taken or why they are preserved. Previously released estate photos include images Epstein did not take and events he did not attend. Still faces appear, names trend. In early January, the department halts further disclosures, citing the need for additional review. Then, on January 30, 2025, officials announced the posting of more than 3 million pages of documents.
The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted sex offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy redactions.
Of more than 3 million pages of documents, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images. The scale overwhelms. Analysts' music scramble. The public sifts. And yet, the central conclusion remains unchanged. No music tapes tying powerful third parties. No verified trafficking to elites, just a mountain of paper in a narrow circle of blame. Music that is when the older details start to reappear in a new light. In May 2009, Virginia Roberts Duffray files a lawsuit claiming she has arranged to have encounters with royalty, politicians, music academicians, businessmen. The lawsuit does not name the men. In March 2011, the Daily Mail publishes a photo of Prince Andrew with his arm around jewelry, igniting a crisis.
We've seen dozens of new photos we haven't seen before of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell with very high-profile people, celebrities, people like Mick Jagger and Michael Jackson, like you showed, also like British royalty and actors. All of that we sort of knew was happening. I want to highlight specifically two for the public interest, and that is President Clinton and President Trump.
His arm around jewelry, igniting a crisis for the royal family. The FBI interviews her. In December 2014, court papers allege encounters with foreign presidents and a well-known prime minister. All deny wrongdoing. Those allegations hang in public memory for music years. Then, in the fresh 2025 memos, investigators write that they cannot corroborate claims of being lent out to other men. One victim's statements are described as inconsistent with others. That is when the story starts to bend. The accusations are not erased, but they are reframed as isolated and unverified. Financial records are also scrutinized. Investigators look at bank transactions, payments to models, transfers that once fueled theories of a sprawling network. They conclude there is no evidence of paid arrangements or.
And if you tend towards cynicism or skepticism, you might wonder, is everything about Epstein and his powerful male friends. Is that coming out? That remains to be seen.
There is no evidence of paid arrangements or payment structures tied to third-party abuse. But those same files contain references to a wire request of $11,000 and an account line reading ball. Name followed by Wovia Bank and One Clear Lake Center LLC. Online, that music detail explodes. Analysts say it is likely a garbled version of bank name. Yet, the rumor travels faster than any correction. Conspiracy threads attach symbolism to the account line, connecting it to ancient deities and ritual narratives. People close to the investigation say the inclusion of that document in the release without context creates a vacuum. Music, and in a vacuum, stories multiply. The official narrative insists nothing occult or secretive
is and never was part of the Epstein files. She was sentenced in 2025. This was an interview by Trump's lawyer to protect Trump from the fallout about the Epstein files. What this really is nothing but a sketchy PR stunt by the Department of Justice. And we have seen this movie before. The Maxwell interview is to the Epstein files what the Barr letter was to the Mueller investigation.
Official narrative insists nothing occult or secretive is present. Music, the internet hears something else entirely. Behind the scenes, political stakes intensify. On July 15, 2025, Representatives Roanna and Thomas Massey introduced the Epstein Files Transparency Act. On November 12, 2025, a House committee releases a trove of emails between Epstein and various figures, including Steve Bannon, Larry Summers, and Reid Hoffman. In one 2019 email to a journalist, Epstein writes that Trump knew about the girls, but does not explain what he means. That line circulates widely. Music 2 days later, on November 14th, Attorney General Bondi announces that the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan will investigate Epstein's ties.
Yeah, I mean, all of it's really intriguing to me. I mean, again, the big picture is we don't normally look in prosecutors' files if there's not a trial. You know, we kind of let the evidence play out after an indictment. We see what happens at a trial. Here we've got this kind of bizarro world, I think maybe fueled by special counsels where they write reports, where everyone feels like we're entitled because we care so much about Jeffrey Epstein to look at all the evidence and find out if there's other names. Well,
investigate Epstein's ties to some of the president's political opponents, including Bill Clinton and others. Music, none of those men are accused of misconduct by Epstein's accusers. Still, the optics are volatile. Allies frame it as accountability. Critics call it retaliation. Either way, the files are no longer just historical records. They are active political ammunition. Then comes July 24th and 25th, 2025. Music Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche interviews Ghislaine Maxwell. She denies wrongdoing and says she never sees Trump involved in any music inappropriate activity. Shortly afterward,
what I've gathered from your articles, this seems to be a global network that Epstein was a part of, and I believe there are multiple Epsteins. Like, I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein was the head of the snake. Yeah, like, you know, they never go after the head of the snake. They never go after the head
of the snake, quote unquote, are just, it's the billionaire class, and so there's a faction of these billionaires in our oligarchy. And of course, the American oligarchy, you know, the American oligarchs don't necessarily, a lot of them don't have an allegiance necessarily to the United States.
The timing draws attention. People close to the situation say transfers happen for administrative reasons. Others note that movement of a high-profile inmate during peak document scrutiny invites speculation. Add to that the tragic April 25, 2025 passing of Jew at age 41, and the emotional temperature rises. Harasjumas' memoir is published on October 21, 2025, revisiting her claims of being trafficked to powerful men. 9 days later, King Charles strips Prince Andrew of his remaining titles. Official actions, personal consequences, and institutional denials all collide within months. So the surface story remains.
And in the emails, it is quite clear that Jeffrey Epstein had a wide, almost incalculably wide circle of associates. People who were celebrities, people who were either in foreign governments or leaders of foreign governments, business tycoons, and the like.
Story remains. Exhaustive review, no corroborated elite abuse, no client list. But here's the pressure point. Music, the Justice Department confirms that certain materials, including sensitive images and videos identifying victims, will never be made public. The law allows withholding information that identifies victims. That makes sense on paper. Yet, it also means the public can never independently verify what is and is music not contained in those sealed portions. When members of Congress are granted access to unredacted files Monday through Friday at the department, whispers begin about what they are seeing and what they are not allowed to copy. Some lawmakers hint at unanswered questions without detail.
Layers upon layers. It's those Russian nesting dolls, and you open it, and there's another one in there, and you open, there's another one in there.
Corruptions at all time, bro. The Epstein files.
I heard there's no files. I heard it's a hoax. And then all of a sudden, he's going to release the files. Well, I thought there was no files.
Man,
he wants an investigation now.
Detailing specifics. Music others say the files match the official summaries. The public watches from outside a locked room, and the central contradiction hardens. If everything has been reviewed and nothing explosive is there, why does every new disclosure feel like it is circling something it refuses to touch? What keeps resurfacing is not a single document but a pattern of containment. Every time scrutiny intensifies, the response tightens around procedure. Early prosecutors route charges through narrow channels. Later, federal teams define the scope with precision. Even now, access is granted under supervision. Documents are filtered through redaction and conclusions are summarized before raw material is absorbed. Music, people who have watched this saga for 2 decades say the rhythm feels familiar. The scandal grows teeth. Then the system fits